Hello everyone and welcome back in. Well, this is our episode number 2 of our ISU 152, our big hunting beast here, set in the Battle of Berlin. We'll get to that in a little bit. This episode is mostly about painting this guy, so this is going to be a lot of fun. Before we get too far along here, I've got to make a confession. I got to come clean. Had a little bit of an issue here, and this channel is always going to be about just showing you how I build models, the good, the bad, and the mistakes. So let's start off with getting our mistakes and the not so good out of the way first, and then we'll continue on with the project. Well, as I concluded the last episode, I had put the tracks on. I was talking about how nice these Lincoln length tracks were, as long as I don't mess them up, and I'm just going along a merry way. This is how I would have weathered these tracks, painted them up, just using some washes of acrylic paints, nice and easy, just a real simple wash just to get them discolored. And then right at the very end, well, I just add a little bit of the dark steel pigment, just brush those across the high points, and it gives it kind of a metallic sheen. This part's going along just fine. Everything's going according to plan. Everything's good. Love these tracks, and well, this is what happens. Well, I hadn't really noticed this until it was time to install those tracks after painting. And I realized, oh geez, I've got two guide teeth right next to each other. My sequence on the links is not correct. And so I looked back at some photographs, and sure enough, I was able to see, yep, I surely did. I assembled them incorrectly. So then I set about doing what we always do. Let's try to fix this. Yeah, these kind of things, not the easiest to fix. And mostly along the way, I ended up breaking links and frustrating myself. And there's not enough extra links in the kit. And, well, I did what all good modelers do. We just throw this aside and put it in the trash can. Luckily, Fru model to the rescue, and I have a set of metal tracks on the way, and they should be here in about a week. Okay, so that's behind me. I feel better now. That's off my chest, and we can get on with the show. Painting is the theme for today, and so I've given the model a primer of Mr. Surfacer 1200. That's the gray color, and that's just from the rattle can. And then I've done some pre-shading using German gray, and a little bit of streaking there, so I'm just adding a little bit of interest here and there, also accentuating some of those shadows and surface details. And then in the open spaces or the between spaces of the shading, I'm kind of given kind of a random splotchy modeled application of ivory color. And my intention here is that the base color, this little bit of pre-shading, is kind of dodged back and forth between light and shadow, and actually a little bit of color alteration with the ivory color, and will kind of make the green color, the overall base color, a little bit more interesting. Speaking of the green color, here we go. This is 4BO from the AK Real Colors line. You can see that I'm adding this. It's about a 50-50 thin ratio between mix of paint and the Real Colors thinner. And I'm just applying that overall, and as you can see, I'm allowing a lot of that pre-shading to come through. I want that to come through, and I'll just gradually build up the green shades and stop at a point where it's mostly green, but it still has some visual interest from the pre-shade. Of course, the same process is done overall. We'll speed up the film here a little bit because it's, well, the same process done overall, but you can get the idea. And actually, I like filming and seeing these a little bit faster because you kind of get a sense of how things start coming together. And you can also see, like I said, there's a real unevenness with the green, and that's something I'm actually looking forward to maintaining throughout this. And here we go with our spinning model here, and yes, it's overall green, but you could still very subtly see a little bit of those light and dark plays under the surface. And as we move on to the next step, which is going to be using the oil paints for the majority of the weathering and the discoloration, the pre-shading is really going to become more and more prominent as the oils bring out those colors. However, before we get on to the weathering and painting, I need to take care of these unit markings on the side of the model here. And if you recall from the very first episode, I've put up a photograph, I'll do it again here now, of this vehicle that I'm going to base the paint scheme upon. And of course, there are no decals for this. Why would there be? And yes, I could have made some stencils, but I'm not a great stencil maker. And even if I do have stencils, I'm not a great stencil maker painter sort of guy. And I have kind of become enamored with these AK weathering pencils. I find them pretty easy to work with. I used them on the T3485 project, which is this kind of the sister project for this build. And I just thought, well, why not? Let's try this one more time. Now, the great thing about using these pencils is, and you can see me kind of doing this in the background, is you can do a lot of editing. So, for instance, the base on the number 4 here, it just wasn't quite level and straight. Just a little bit of water on the brush, and I can erase it and do it again. And I also use that same technique just to clean up a lot of the edges and make them nice and crisp. Again, if you look at the reference photograph, the unit markings are very much scuffed off. So this is a little sponge, just a tiny bit of water on it. And I'm just kind of removing a little bit of the pencil strokes to give it that worn, scuffed appearance. Also recall from the very first episode, I removed the fenders up at the front here. And so I just want to add a few little holes, a little bracket holder holes here, just to give it a little bit more realism, I guess. I'm not even sure if this is realistic, if they were holes or simply brackets. And then, I know it's kind of a cliche, but a little bit of rust here where the fenders were, just a little bit of discoloration. Again, using that sponge, this time filled with a little bit of rust-colored paint. A few dabs here and there. I don't want to go overboard with this. Just a few dabs here and there with the rust color, and I'll come back in with a little bit of a gray color as well, and just kind of tone that down a bit. Because again, I don't want it to be vibrant. I just want it to show that there used to be something there, and there's some discoloration. And then I just rip off the tape like an old Band-Aid, and here we go. Ready to move on. Before we start painting with the oils, I would just like to say thank you very much for watching this video. And if you do enjoy this channel, please hit that like and subscribe button because it helps so very much to get this out to more and more viewers. See, that wasn't so bad. Okay, let's get on with it. Well, the oil paints are going to be used primarily for the remainder of this model, or the construction of the model. That's everything from the shading, the dust, the dirt, the grime, scuffs, chips, everything else. It's all going to be done with the oil paints, or primarily with oil paints. The challenge here, in terms of just watching it on video, is how can I make this interesting for you so you would want to watch it, and more importantly, learn from what I'm doing to either help your own modeling or say, don't do that because Rick messed it up at that point. The process is basically the same overall. I generally start with a lighter colored paint, which is kind of a dust or light buff color. And then I'll start adding our shadows and definition around the surface details using a brown color. And then I might, in this case, like as you see at the top of the hull here, using a green mixed with a brown just to show some dirt and grime buildup and some staining. And we interrupt this program for one more short commercial break, and this is to say thank you to my Patreons. On my Patreon page, if you like this type of video, these types of techniques, well, I make short tutorial videos which I share with my Patreons, photographs of these projects as they're ongoing. We have a Discord server for chats, all sorts of fun stuff going on there. So again, if you like this channel and like to support it a little bit further and want a little bit more content, please check it out. The link for it is below. So now we get back to it, and this is going to be the fun stuff. So there's a few elements on this vehicle that I think that we can have some fun here. The stain along the side here of the hull, well, let's try to do that one first. Let's tackle that one first. Again, I'm starting with it's light dust. It's 502 Aptalung light dust. And I'm just kind of dabbing on, kind of akin to a sketch. I just want to sketch these on, the outline of what the stain kind of looks like according to those photographs. I'm not trying to get too precise right now. And then over time, with a little bit of nuance with the brush, so I'll take a little bit off, put a little bit back on, I'll start refining and defining the stain a little bit more carefully to replicate what I see in those photographs. Of course, the photographs show a little bit of splatter and splash, so just put a little thinner on the brush and just tap it lightly, just very localized area. Anything that gets in the wrong place I can clean up. And then we'll just we'll speed up the video a little bit here just so you can kind of see the work in progress and see it progress, kind of like a time lapse. But one important thing to kind of consider in all your modeling, at least I've found this, is that your eye, our eyes, our body, our brain, we work off a contrast. We look for edges here and there. That's why sidewalks and streets and roads and things like that have stripes and curbs and things, because our minds automatically define those. So it's important on your models to do the same. So I've done a little bit of edging along some of these plates, along the top edge, around the side edges with a darker tone. And then I can work on the weathering in between those areas, these volumes. Well, this should be a lot of fun. So this is, of course, another stain. It's on the side of the hull. But, looking at the photograph, it's, it's distinctive. It's characteristic of this particular vehicle. So I want to try to replicate that here. It's been my experience that, especially when you're trying to replicate some sort of a stain or distinctive feature, say from a photograph, that trying to do it just first off, like just hit it off, out of the ballpark with the first stroke, it just doesn't, at least it doesn't work for me. So I always need to kind of build up to it or sneak up to it. So what I'm doing here is I'm kind of preparing the surface with its olive green as the base layer. And as you can tell, it's darker than the base color of the model itself. So we're already starting to get that little bit of staining. And then I'm continually looking at the photograph, which is sitting right here on the side of my bench, and just kind of refining the shape and some of the color tones and a little bit of the streaking of what I see on that black and white image to try to replicate it here on the model. The reference photograph also shows a longer streaking stain that's up at the front of the vehicle. So again, the same process here as well, applying a little bit of paint, a little bit of cleanup with a clean brush. Again, the paints are going on nearly dry, so there's not a lot of thinner in this. Very translucent, and just building up those effects ever so slightly, ever so slowly. Now at this stage, I have the basic components of this side, this plate here, in place. We've done the edging around, so we've created that contrast earlier on. We've got those distinctive stains in place, so now we know what we're working around. Of course, we have the unit markings, and now it's time just to start adding those environmental effects, as I call them. This would be the dirt and the grime and a few extra stains here and there. We can accentuate some of those surface details with a little bit of shadowing and shading. We can add a little bit of color here and there just to give a little bit of visual interest. This is the fun part about, this is the part I enjoy most about working on models, is this part exactly right here, right now. I'm just going to let the video roll here for a little while so we can watch what's happening here. This is sped up about 200%, I think it is, on video, so it's going a lot quicker than it does in real life. But I think the process is still here and it gets captured on the video. And it's kind of part of my new approach that I want to take with some of these videos, is to give a little bit more breathing space to some of the techniques so you can actually see how they're being applied. And by speeding up the video for these little longer segments, give you kind of that sense of time lapse, so you can zip through it real quickly and see, oh, he started here and he ended there and this worked or that didn't work. And you can see right now I'm just adding a few streaks and streaks and chips here and there, just pulling the colors across ever so slightly. And once this dries, and it will become even more translucent, and just add to all these little subtle effects that become so important on the final model. Of course, the same process I use all around the model, and the whole roof here is no different. But one thing I like to do in these areas, especially around the crew hatches, is, because of the crew movement, these areas actually get polished and cleaned up a little bit. They wipe off the dust. And so by using a little bit of the green color just over top, I can kind of replicate that idea of kind of the crew moving around and cleaning up the surfaces a bit. And that starts to bring us to the end of this painting process. Yes, I know it's been a lot of oil paint work, and I hope you got something out of it. I know that was maybe long to watch and maybe even repetitive, but there's a lot in there, I think, that can be shown and learned. And of course, if you have any questions, please hit me up. If you'd like to see more videos like this in a little bit more detail, my Patreon page is a great place to do that. Also hit the like and subscribe. That helps so much. Next video, we'll be doing, I'm not sure exactly, probably still waiting for tracks, but I have some figures that I'm going to be painting. We've got some stowage to be putting on the model here as well, and of course we have a base to construct, so we'll get something figured out by the next one. Until then, take care guys, and happy modeling.